no justification for justification. I thought that was just amazing. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Practical Learning Professional. My name is Matt Jertson, founder and chief learning officer of Better Everyday Studios. I just got back from the DevLearn 2022 conference, fresh back from Vegas. And so what I thought I'd do today is just give a quick rundown of the 5 main takeaways that I had from the conference. Now, I'm sure there are infinite number of takeaways. This is by no means trying to say that these were the best presentations, the most thought-provoking presentations. Absolutely not. There was so much going on. Nobody there got to see more than a fraction of it. So I'd love to hope to hear from other people about what their takeaways were, but these were just kind of the few things that I came away with. Before I get into my specific list, one just overwhelming feeling that I had is just like the learning and development community is just so amazing. Everyone is so positive, wants to help you, wants to understand what's going on in your world. It was just a really great experience. And also something that I just wanted to share before I get into the list itself is, without a doubt, one of the highlights was on the third day. It was my favorite quote of the entire entire time I was there. I was at a presentation about design and good design in your learning, and the presentation was done by Mia Amalgar and Michael Wright. And Mia said something when she was talking about text and kind of how to orient text on a page, and she said, "There is no justification for justification." Absolutely amazing. Referring to the idea, when you have columns like you see like you used to see in a newspaper that were left, right, justified. So it would be, an even on both sides, and it creates all these weird spaces inside. No justification for justification. I thought that was just amazing. But okay, so my top 5 takeaways from DevLearn 2022. Number 5 actually came from the keynote speaker of Kevin Bethune. He, near the end of his talk, was talking about the 7 dimensions of leadership, the way he sees it, and he puts them on a spectrum of being a gatekeeper leader to being a servant leader. The last of those seven dimensions was the leader orientation. And the really interesting thing that I found was, so the leader orientation, he was talking about the spectrum was leading from the front to leading to behind. Now, for just about anybody who's ever learned or thought about leadership, the thing that you always think about is wanting to lead from the front. But what Kevin said is actually that's being a gatekeeper leader, because you're putting yourself in front of the people on your team. You're the one controlling the resources, you're the one figuring out the problems. When in actuality, what you really want to do, if you want to be a servant leader, is, strangely enough, lead from behind. You want to be feeding resources to your team for them to go solve problems. I loved it because it was just like an interesting flip on the way most of us think about it. So that's why it made number 5 on my list. Number 4 from Corinne Pagino. I'm not sure if that's how you say your name. I missed how you pronounce your last name. I apologize. But her presentation was talking about skill assessments, how to do a good skill assessment. If you're rolling out a skill strategy out to your organization, you're going to have to assess where people are in those skills. And this wasn't really a new idea, but it's always a great thing to be reminded of. She's saying that, when you're doing skill assessments of your team, whether it's the initial skill assessment or the recurring skill assessments, the key thing to remember is that these assessments are meant to designate progress, to highlight progress, and give feedback. They are not about measuring your performance. And I sat there, I know that's true. As soon as you're having a performance or a pay conversation where a manager is saying to their employee, this is your rating for the quarter or for the year, and it's going to have this impact on your bonus or whether or not you can get a raise or a promotion or that kind of thing. We know that the human brain just shuts down then. It's going back into fight or flight mode because it does directly impact your ability to put food on the table, take care of your family, all that kind of stuff. And so in the face of that kind of situation that has real world implications, you cannot separate, kind of the fact that you're not going to get paid or you're not going to get a raise from the real feedback that you could take in, act upon, and improve. And so she says very clearly and spot on that you want to use these things as two different things. So if you have, a performance management system, that should be over here, and the skill assessment system should be over here. I still don't know how that practically works. I've been in organizations before that were just standing up a performance management system that was designed to be separate from pay, so you could give feedback and then have the pay discussion separately. And it's just really difficult. Even if you start with the best intentions, so many managers just will say like, well, but if we're measuring their performance, or measuring, assessing what they're doing, then that's their performance measurement, right? Like, we should put them together and just knock it out. And it's really hard to keep those two separated. So it's a great idea. Practically applying it is very hard, but it is something that we have to keep fighting for always. So that was number 4. Number 3 for my best takeaways from DevLearn 2022 came from Ben Betts. And so when I was really focused on skills going to this. And Ben Betts was giving a talk out on the expo floor talking about skills. And he was referencing a study. I'm not sure where he got the study from. I missed that part. But he was saying that when you do measurements of how people progress in their skill level, he said that the basic standard rate is that competency increases at a constant rate for every doubling of experience. So if, let's say you go from level 1 to level 2 in a week, then level 2 to level 3 will take 2 weeks. Level 3 to level 4 will, so you get the idea. It like keeps doubling the amount of time. So the kind of the payoff that you get for more and more experience keeps going down and down and down in some ways. I just never heard that before as a kind of a standard expectation or way to think about gaining competency in something, that for every notch that you go up, every step that you go up, going to the next step is actually going to take twice as much experience. But if you really think about it, that definitely makes sense. There's definitely kind of, that asymptote that you start to hit at the top, where it just becomes harder and harder for you to raise your skill level. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing. The other thing that I came to DevLearn to really understand was XAPI. I've learned about it a lot, I've seen it a lot, but I've known about it for a very long time. But I just kind of wanted to close the loop in my understanding of it. And so my number 2 takeaway from DevLearn 2022 definitely came from Jeff Batt regarding XAPI. And the great takeaway that I had is one thing that I want to understand is I understand what we can do with XAPI. We, people who are publishing learning, putting it in an LMS or an LRS or whatever you need to do. And we have different publishing tools that allow us to get different bits of information. But the big sell of XAPI is always that you can record other things as well. You can record people doing things out in the business. So if you say, you're training a sales team and you want them to go do some activities, you can get information on those activities from Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever CRM you're using. And so the question that I had was, okay, but what does that mean for the people? What do other people need to do in order to make that happen, right? Like, I need to put XAPI statements into my learning. Great, I can do that. But what do the people out in the rest of the business, what do I need the sales enablement folks to do? Or, how do they practically make it so that signal gets sent from those systems back to my LRS, where I'm storing all of these records? And I had not been able to get a good answer to that until hearing from Jeff Batt, when he gave the perfect example of, hey, you can use Zapier to send XAPI statements. Now, if you've never used Zapier before, this is a no-code way to connect two different systems, right? So you have a website where people fill out a form, and maybe there isn't a direct connection in it to send to wherever you're storing a list of all the people filling out the form. Zapier allows you to connect that form to your list. And so every time somebody completes a form, it sends that information over to your list. Zapier allows you to do that. And so with Zapier, you can actually send XAPI statements to your learning record store. You can go to HubSpot and say every time that when a person successfully opens an account or creates a contact or whatever thing you want them to do, it's going to send a record back to your LRS and say, hey, they just did this. So that answered my question, right? What do I need to do? What work needs to happen? Do I need to get support from other people in order to make sure that I'm capturing some of that information, those actions that are happening outside the learning system? Turns out not really. I can handle all that myself. And now, obviously this depends on the system. It needs to be connected with Zapier. But I thought that was just, it really got the wheels turning of just like, oh my gosh, I can get really involved with sales enablement in a great way now, where I not only create a course that shows them how to use the CRM, but then I can give them tasks to go complete in the CRM, and I can automatically store records of that completion. Got me really, really excited. Okay, so that was number 2. Without a doubt, my number 1 takeaway from DevLearn 2022, it came from the last presentation that I went to. I don't know what was up with the day 3 presenters. They really brought their game. I feel like they heard that, they knew they were presenting on day 3, the last day, and they knew they had to bring their A game, and they did. Richard Going, he was giving a presentation on PowerPoint, and my takeaway is simply PowerPoint is awesome. I think, we always talk about death by PowerPoint. Oh, it's so awful. This is really, truly an example of it's bad because people don't know what they're doing and they don't know how to really use the system. I've always been a fan of PowerPoint, and Richard really pushed me to the next level. He introduced concepts like a morph transition, where if you have a box on, you can have a square on one side of the screen or some kind of shape on one side of the screen, and in the next slide you have it over here. You can actually use the morph transition so that it like merges over into this other shape. It looks really, really cool. And then another great one that I had never heard of before was the fact that, if you're ever presenting virtually, say, and you have your screen with the PowerPoint in it, and then you're in a little window up here separated from the PowerPoint, not only does it make the presentation smaller, but you're just like really far separated. There's actually a way in PowerPoint to embed yourself, your webcam footage, into the PowerPoint as you present it. You can make it a little circle, you can make it a square, you can make it big, small, you can put it wherever you want to on the screen. You can even make your webcam footage the entire background of your presentation. So you could plan it out. You can build your presentation to that you're the one there, and you're kind of like, you can imagine yourself kind of like interacting with elements on the screen almost. Really, really amazing. So that was without a doubt my number 1 takeaway. Thinking back on the whole experience, it was really great. Got to meet a lot of new people for the first time. Since I've met a lot of people over the past 3 years and never met them in person, it was great to see them for the first time. Loved the community, loved it. I really recommend that whether you are brand new to the learning profession, maybe you're a manager who's just kind of looking for help, go ahead and look at some of the different conferences that are happening in the learning space, whether it's DevLearn, whether it's ATD, whether it's many, many other events, training industry, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of good events out there. Highly recommend you go to one of them because you pick up a lot of knowledge. For sure, you pick up a lot of knowledge, but I think number 2 is just the connections that you build, getting to know people in the industry. It's a great community. Everybody wants to help, so I really recommend it. So anyway, those were my top 5 takeaways. I'm sure you had many. Please feel free, leave your takeaways in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time on The Practical Learning Professional. Thanks. Hey, are you new to learning or struggling keeping up with the learning needs of your organization? If you find yourself in that position, I want to help out. So down in the description of this video, there's a link to schedule time with me where we can chat about kind of the challenges that you're having and seeing if there's any way that Better Everyday Studios could help you take your learning organization to the next level. I'd really love to hear from you. Even if we never do business, I just love talking to learning people like you. So please go down to the description below and click on the link, set up some time with me. I'd really love to chat.